Hi, this is Megan with Beadaholique, and today I'm going to show you how to make a wire wrapped setting for a chaton using a wire jig. So what this is going to do is make a setting that's just a simple wire wrapped back and forth kind of zigzag setting, and you can use the sides of the setting to attach a chaton to any other kind of wire strand or other piece of hardware. So what we're going to use is a wire jig. This is a thingamajig. It's a very inexpensive tool, so it's a good starting tool. It's great if you're going to try this out or if you're not going to use it very often. There are quite a number of tools, different wire jigs available, so you can pick the one that you want to work with. We're also going to use some craft wire. I have some artistic wire. I'm using 24 gauge. I've tried this with a few different gauges, and if you get too thick of a gauge, it gets really hard to work with it. So don't go too thin. It is going to be soft, and you can definitely use some glue to stabilize this to keep it more sturdy. In fact, I would recommend that anyway. So you're not relying entirely on the strength of the wire. So a 24 is going to work really well. It looks nice. You'll also need a crimp bead or crimp tube, and it just needs to be big enough to fit 2 strands of your wire through it, because that is how you connect your wire together. Oops. Okay, so on your wire jig, insert your pegs so that you have a row and that they're offset by 1. You don't want them to be straight up and down. You do want it to form little triangles like that. And there will be some guesswork involved with how far apart you set them, for how deep it goes on your chaton, and also how long you need to go in order to go around. But you can just kind of play around with it and see. Go ahead and cut a length of your craft wire. And then you want to straighten it out with a pair of nylon jaw pliers by just running it through a few times. Just get out any serious bends. And then anytime you're using a wire jig, it's easiest if you start with a loop. So just take a pair of round nose pliers and just create a little loop at the end of your wire. Place the loop on the first peg, and then you're gonna go back and forth and make sure that you're bending your wire a little further over than it needs to go so that it stays. Otherwise, when you pull it off, it's gonna pop out and not keep its shape. So back and forth and make a little zigzaggy pattern with the rounded ends between each peg. And hold it down as you work so that it doesn't pop up off the top of the pegs. You want to use your free hand to hold the wire a little further down the peg. And using the jig for this will help you have a nice even piece of wire. You can use pliers to do this, but I like the uniformity that you get when you use the jig. When you come back around the last one, we're not going to end this with a loop. Just pull it to where you get like a nice right angle, and then take your piece off the jig and just flatten that out a little bit. You can just use nylon jaw pliers. Okay, and you want to have a nice flat piece. Now you're only going to need a little bit, like 1/4 of an inch past the bend. Go ahead and cut it a little longer, maybe 3/8. And then you need a nice sharp corner because we're going to put a bend in this. So if you're using like a wig jig, it has sharp corners. If whatever jig you're using has a sharp corner, you can use that. Otherwise, you can use the edge of the table. As long as it's not a beveled edge, you just want a sharp corner. And you're just going to take your piece and put it right up against the edge of the table, right with the corner in the middle, and press it down to put a bend in it. So that your piece should have a nice 90-degree bend right about in the middle. And then you're going to take your loop here and you're going to straighten it out so that you have a bent piece on both ends. You want this curve coming up from there, but you don't want the rest of it to be looped. So just take your round nose pliers and unbend it, and then kind of squish it around in the nylon jaws until it's pretty flat. Then you're going to take your chaton and you're going to wrap your wire around to form a circle. And you want to be able to space out the little loops to go around it pretty comfortably. If you are only getting part of the way around the circle, you might want to use more pegs and make a longer piece. If you're all the way around the circle, you might just want to trim it and not use the whole thing. That's pretty good once you stretch it and link the last two together. I think that's going to fit nicely. So go ahead and put your chaton aside. What you need to do is you have these two bent ends here. What we're going to want to do is overlap them so that they can be one link that bends around the back of the chaton. So take a crimp tube or a crimp bead and go ahead and put it onto one of them, and then you're going to want to bend the other one a little bit flatter so that we can get it in there. And then you're going to take the crimp tube right to the middle of where both of these bend to start to go into the curve. And then use a crimp tool to crimp that crimp tube. And get that nice and secure so that the ends don't go anywhere. And then use a pair of flush cutters to cut off the excess right next to the crimp tube. Okay, then take your round nose pliers and hold them up against your crimp tube there. And then you're going to want to bend, put the bend back in that part of your wire since it kind of went a little straight. And you can use your fingers too. This wire is not that hard. And the ends might look a little jumbled up, but when you put them back on your chaton, they will straighten out. So slide your chaton back into place. And you want to even out the loops. Just kind of use your fingers to pull them around until they're spaced evenly. And then hold the crystal back toward the back and just press down on the loops. And once they're pressed down, you can go back in and even them out a little bit more until they're spaced around there evenly. And that's the basic setting. You can see it just wrapped around the front and the back. And you can use silver, copper, brass, gold. It does, I think it looks really nice if you have a plain colored chaton to use a nice bright color of the craft wire because it really pops. And then all you do to attach this onto a ring or a wire is just gently open up a couple of the prongs, slide your wire in, and then bend it back down. And you do want to try to get it as secure as possible. As I said, you want to use a little bit of E6000 if you're going to put it on something and you want to make sure that it's secure. This will move around as it is quite a bit. So just put the glue on the back of your chaton and try to get it right onto the back of whatever you're mounting it onto. Just a little bit will go a long way and it will hold it in place nicely. That is how you make a wire wrapped setting using a wire jig.